All right, 20 past 1 o'clock hour on a Football Friday from our good friends at Ernest & Sons. Good stuff from LC with the prime picks. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 2 o'clock straight up. As always, don't forget the 609-573-3776. We'll continue to talk a little NFL, and Jason Fitzgerald does a great job over the cap. It's an awesome, awesome website. If you guys ever get a chance, check it out. It's overthecap.com. It's salary cap spacing, and it really breaks it down. We'll take a look from a Philly perspective, and Jason kind enough to join us. Jason, first and foremost, Happy New Year, and condolences to your gangrene, my friend.
Yeah, that was for the Jets. Not a good look for them last week. Very disappointing for those of us who pull for them.
Yeah, but you also know, because I know you're a diehard Jets fan, that's one of those games where you turned around as a Jet fan, you were paranoid and probably said, I don't like this spot here against the Bills.
Well, pretty much as soon as the game started, I think you felt that. Going into the game, I thought they were going to win. That's probably my fault for not realizing the history there too much. But, yeah, pretty much one or two possessions in, you realized they were going to be in for a tough time, and Buffalo was coming in there pretty motivated to win that game, and the Jets pretty much just rolled over.
All right, let's talk about your Jets for a moment as far as numbers, salaries, and contracts going forward. When you look at this team, what kind of money do you think Fitzpatrick's going to command out there? I mean, do you think this is an easy signing for the Jets, or is he going to command some dollars on the free agent market?
I don't think the money that he'll get will be too big. I kind of have him pegged as a $7 to $8 million a year quarterback. It could go higher. Yeah, if the Jets are afraid of losing him, maybe $10 million, $12 million. But he's been a free agent so many times. He's been on so many teams, been passed over so many times. I can't imagine one season at his age is going to somehow make teams decide, okay, we want this guy to be our starter for $15 million, $16 million a year. Stranger things have happened, but I'd be pretty surprised if teams went that high.
One of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL over the last month of the season, Kirk Cousins, and it's amazing the money that he was making from his rookie contract. RG3's buried there in the depth chart. Washington wants to give Cousins monster money. Are we talking, when it's all said and done, a 5-year? Is he a $100 million quarterback?
He might be. He's shown something this year. They made the playoffs. I think how he plays this weekend will play a pretty big role in what he can earn, what maximum compensation he can look for. But when you look at the quarterbacks and when you look at how many players are making over $18, $19 million a year, he'll probably fit right in that category. I think you'll have to look real close to the contract structure. I think if they're smart, and I think they'll probably do this, they'll probably float a structure out there similar to the Tannehill, Kaepernick, Andy Dalton one, which will have some incentives and a lot of money tied into performance, because you're really still going on a small sample with him. Those first couple of years weren't that much, but this year he's played very well, especially down the stretch, to help him get to the playoffs.
All right, obviously, as we bring in our backyard with Sam Bradford, the argument's been made for the last week or so, even during the season. The fact that he banked on himself, I don't believe those reports earlier in the season that he turned down a $70-something million contract. If he did, shame on him. But the fact that he banked on himself, I thought the last month or so, a little more comfortable under center, cut down the turnovers. The wide receivers didn't help him out. But the bottom line is, I don't see why or how the Eagles would franchise him at $20+ million. If that's the case, you might as well sign him for a 5-year deal. If you asked me, I wouldn't do it. I would do a 3-year contract, make an incentive lace because of his injury history. I think you got a small sampling size this year. Maybe the ceiling, we already know what it is. But when it's all said and done, what's your belief on Sam Bradford as far as the money that he's going to command, and where do you see his range? Is he a $20 million quarterback?
No, I don't see him as a $20 million quarterback. As you said, he's always been injured. He missed a couple games this year. The Eagles, in general, were disappointing, so it's not like he has that going for him either. I think he's probably going to be looking at a short-term deal, 2 to 3 years. I kind of feel like a base value in that $13, $14 million range, right around what he was paid on his rookie contract, maybe with some incentives that can bump it higher if the team gets to the playoffs or something like that. But I'd be pretty surprised if he was in that $18, $19 million range. I think he just needs to show more to get there.
When just kind of a piggyback that, and you're answering a follow, when you look at Bradford and you look at some of the other quarterbacks out there, it's a thin market. I mean, some of these, they're retreads or veterans or journeymans. Obviously, you got Osweiler, you got Cousins that's going to get signed, you have Fitzpatrick, and then Bradford. Does he have any leverage here at all? That's
hard to say. That Sanchez didn't the team really didn't respond with him in those couple games. That's really the Eagles' other option right now. I don't know if there's someone that they have targeted in the draft. But the way the roster is constructed now, there's probably a little bit of leverage. There is the you don't have another option, card that he can pull out. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see if, who can call who's bluff there.
Yeah.
But I don't think the Eagles will cave in and, do the monster deal. The Mike Vick deal isn't that old, I think, to where the front office is just going to say, all right, let's plunge right back in on an expensive quarterback. I think they'll be a lot more cautious than they were that time around.
When you look at the cap hit and the dead money with the Eagles and players like Peters, Riley Cooper, what's the feel you're getting on DeMarco Murray? I mean, obviously they paid him $40 million. It was a 5-year contract. They didn't utilize him the right way. Kelly's out. They're looking for a head coach. I would suspect because of the money they're paying him, they're going to try to figure out a way to use him. But if they were to cut him, as crazy as it sounds, what kind of hit are they taking?
They would take a $13 million cap hit on him. They'd lose $5 million in cap space. They'd have to cut him a check for, I think it's $7 million. So he's not going to go anywhere unless they can find somebody to trade for him. That would be a very surprising release.
Let's switch gears to the Giants because they have a lot of question marks surrounding their team going forward. I know they have some about $50 million in cap money to kind of throw around here and there, but what about the likes of JPP, Prince Amukamara in your eyes? And also, no one's really talking about this, Victor Cruz, because Victor Cruz has been injured basically for 2 years. So as far as a money standpoint, would it be beneficial to let these guys walk, to cut him? And JPP, do you think they'd give him maybe a soft deal, not the one that he was expecting before the hand injury?
With JPP, I think he's going to be on another 1-year contract, incentive-laden kind of deal, $7 to $8 million probably base value on that. Possibility to get up to that franchise tag number, which last year I think was around 13, 14 million. I think that's what they'll do. If you watched him play those games, he really couldn't tackle with that big club on his hand.
Nope.
You can't get into any kind of long-term contract, I think, unless you actually see him in a game playing without that thing on his hand next year. So I think that'll be another 1-year contract that they're looking at there. Victor Cruz, I would think Victor Cruz will be cut. I was surprised last year that the Giants did not approach him about taking less salary because he's really been injured for the last couple of years. Never really recaptured what he was a couple of years ago when he was the spark plug on that team. They'll save $6.1 million in cap space by releasing him. Because of the injury history, he probably doesn't have a big market, so I could see them seeing if he'll play for the minimum with a chance to earn some back in incentives. But I'd be stunned if he was back at his cap figure this year, which is $9.9 million. Prince Amukamara, I think the Giants, he's a second-tier corner. I think he still has potential. He's battled injuries there. That's been difficult for him. I think the Giants will probably play the market first and then go back to him if they don't find anyone else. But I don't think that'll be a priority for them in February to re-sign him right away, unless they just get the feeling coming out of the combine and some other meetings that there's just nobody else they can bring in.
Again, 1:30 on a Football Friday. Rich Quinones here. OverTheCap.com's Jason Fitzgerald joins us for a couple moments. Good insight as always. What are some of the teams that actually use their salary cap, the winners, if you will, when you kind of do a recap of the season? Who came out looking good in your eyes this year?
You had a couple teams that did well. I think pretty much most of the teams that end up in the playoffs, I think you have to, tip your hat to most of them. The Seahawks don't have a lot of cap space. They've been pretty good with their salary cap to be able to walk that tightrope this year, and then things will lighten up for them next year. And, I think that's a team that's done particularly well. The Patriots are another team that's close to those cap limits, but they manage their roster incredibly well. If you look at teams that have a lot of cap space that happen to do well this year, the Bengals, Cincinnati is one of those teams that's really always managed their cap extremely well. They have a roster of some really good players. They've found ways to keep those players for not really superstar money, with the exception of A.J. Green. And even in his case, they got a deal that really worked on their terms more so than his. So that would be probably the team that actually always has a lot of cap space that I think made out pretty well this year. And
Oakland and Jacksonville have a lot of money to spend in the offseason too, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much been a trend the last 2 or 3 years with those two franchises. Oakland in particular, they went through a gutting of the roster where they essentially turned themselves into an expansion team. So they haven't really had a lot of money invested in that team. So every year they're carrying over millions and millions of dollars in cap room on short-term contracts. So they've always had a lot of space. Jacksonville's kind of been the same way. They didn't go through the same period as Oakland, but they went through a period where they had to get a lot of old guys off that team, and that really depleted their roster between that and poor drafting. So they just haven't had a lot of future commitments, and they've had a lot of money to carry over each year. Both have been somewhat reluctant in free agency to really go in big. They've been in there and play on a lot of those players at that $8 million, $9 million level, but they really haven't jumped in on those super big name guys yet. Maybe this will be the year that they try and do that.
Two more quickies. Got about 2 more minutes with you. Going into the season, what team is in the worst spot as far as if they want to go after some free agents?
Oh, it's the Saints. For the last 3 years, it's been the Saints. They're just the most mismanaged team in the NFL when it comes to the cap, and they have at least a whole year that they're going to need to really climb out of it and get back into it.
Did I read that correctly on the website? They're negative?
Yeah, right now they're going to have to cut players just to be compliant with the cap, or extend Drew Brees or do some things with it. They're one of 2 or 3 teams that projects to probably be over the cap next year.
And from a money standpoint, is Calvin Johnson just trying to force his way out of Detroit, or is he trying to get a new contract, or if he's contemplating retirement, or if he's a disgruntled employee, so to speak, would the Lions even consider cutting him?
I think the Lions should consider trading him rather than cutting him. I think the retirement talk is probably more about getting another contract with the Lions, probably before they bring in another GM. Who they had running the organization before was very generous with the contracts. You don't know what's going to happen when a new guy comes in, especially if he wants to make his mark by getting rid of some of these older players. So if he makes that play now, it kind of becomes a non-issue when a new guy is hired. If Detroit's ownership steps up and says, we're just going to sign this guy right now to 2 years guaranteed, like Larry Fitzgerald got out in Arizona.
Yeah. Interesting. Everyone out there, it's a great read on the website. Always good stuff there with Jason. And like I said, it's a great follow on Twitter, overthecap.com. Jace, I appreciate it, pal. And I don't know if you're Yanks or Mets fans. I would say pitchers and catchers in a couple weeks. Don't worry about it, because all the New York teams stink this year, pal.
We'll see how that goes.
All right, but be well. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself. All right, Jason Fitzgerald. Good stuff.